During the long years that make up World War II, numerous atrocities were committed by the Nazi Party. The question that historians have been asking ever since then is simple. How did it happen? How did the Nazi Party, which started out in humble beginnings, become one of the most infamous and terrifying organizations in the modern age? How did the Nazi Party rise to power? The answers to that question may vary. Some, such as Bormann, say that the sole reason lies within the man himself, Adolf Hitler. Others, like Fallbrook, say that it was the ultimate fail of the democratic government, the Weimar Republic. There are even some, such as Scherer, who say that it was not surprising at all, and that these events were merely a logical continuation of German history. Then there are those that believe that there is no one factor that can be pinned as the ultimate reason for the Nazi rise to power. There is no one event, person, or treaty who alone can hold the blame for such a thing. The story of Hitler's rise to power can be explained by a mixture of luck, opportunity, and ambition. All the factors previously mentioned, and then some, added together and led to simmer can be the cause. It was merely a culmination of unique events and circumstances that can be accounted for the Nazi rise to power. The story of the Nazi rise to power does not start when Hitler seizes total control of the government, but 15 years earlier, in 1918. At the end of the First World War, Germany had suffered great losses. With 7.2 million people either dead or injured, almost everyone was affected by the war in some way. They had been badly defeated, something the war propaganda had not prepared them for. There were high tensions within the country. People saw the surrender of the German army to be shameful, and in order to keep some sense of honor, the army claimed that they did not surrender and that they had been stabbed in the back. They claimed it was the government who was to blame, and the signing of the Versailles Treaty was one of the first major decisions of the new democratic government, starting the Weimar Republic off on shaky ground. The Treaty of Versailles was not so much of a negotiation as it was a forced agreement. The terms were harsh, with Germany losing large areas of land and the war guilt clause forcing them to pay expensive reparations. This not only hurt the economy, but also wounded the pride of the German people. This disappointment and the German army's adamant claims against their surrender made the German people unhappy, and those who had had a part in signing the treaties were known as the November Criminals. In the aftermath of World War I, Germany was forced to pay large reparations for the war to both England and France. The economy was unstable and rapidly declining, inflation was growing, and the worth of the mark was going downhill. By 1923, the inflation had graduated into hyperinflation, and by the beginning of December, $1 was worth 4.2 trillion marks. While some people prospered during this time, others could not pay for basic necessities, and many people starved. In 1925, the economy leveled out and became temporarily stable, thanks to the work of Foreign Minister Gustav Stresemann. Unfortunately, Stresemann's death came at an inconvenient time for the country, occurring in the same year as the Wall Street crash. With the first economic downfall still fresh in people's minds, the second wave of economic distress, the Great Depression, scared people into taking action with their political power. The amount of people voting increased, and it was then, after the year 1928, that the Nazi Party gained power in the political world. In the beginning, the Nazi Party, then known as the German Workers' Party, or DAP, was a small political party established in 1818 with only 7 members. It was not until the next year that Hitler joined. He was a charismatic speaker, quite popular with his nationalistic speeches, and he quickly rose within the party. On the 20th of February, 1920, the party came out with a 25-point program, and the name was changed to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP. The fame of the NSDAP slowly increased along with the fame of Hitler. The apparent stable period after the first economic downfall did little to aid the party, who thrived during times of trouble. It was not until the Great Depression that the Nazi Party was pushed into its rise to power, becoming the largest party in parliament before Hitler dissolved the constitution and, eventually, gave the party full control over the state. Another party at that time included the Social Democratic Party of Germany, or the SPD, which took advantage of the class separations to appeal to the lower classes. Their communist-like views scared the middle class, who would do almost anything to hold on to the wealth that named them superior. This laid the perfect foundations for the Nazi Party to sweep in with propaganda, promising an end to all problems and fears. An example of this was in the town of Northeim. Along with the growing nationalism and increasing impatience over the Depression, violence and political tension were significant factors in preparing the town for Nazi takeover. The German Communist Party, or KPD, was the Nazi Party's biggest rival. After the second decline of the economy, politics became very polarized, and the two parties were at opposite ends of the spectrum. As the two main political parties, they competed for votes, seats, and power. Their posters often insulted the opposite party in order to promote themselves. Hitler would tell the German people that the NSDAP was the only thing stopping the communists from taking over Germany. He used the March action they launched to prove to the people that they wanted to take over Germany from within and turn it into a dictatorship based on the Russian model. It was the ideology of the Nazi Party, so different from its left-wing adversaries, that brought it to the attention of the German people. In February of 1920, Hitler and the leaders of the NSDAP came up with a 25-point plan. This included the demanding of equal rights for all German people, the abrogation of the Treaty of Versailles, and the mention of a pure Aryan race, with the point that this cannot include Jews. The Nazi Party was very vocal about what they thought was unacceptable in Germany. Part of the appeal to the people was that they were unhappy with almost everything. They were unhappy with the government, with the treaties, with the economy, with the state of Germany, and its people. The Nazi Party was an anti-democratic, anti-Semitic, and, before it needed funding from large industries for the war, anti-capitalist. One of their main tactics was to use scapegoats to reason with themselves for the flaws of the country. One of the most popular scapegoats was the Jewish population. The Nazi Party often spoke up against the Jews.
Jüdischen Zeitungen heute glauben, auf versteckte Drohungen die nationalsozialistische Bewegung einschüchtern zu können. Wenn sie heute glauben, unsere Notverordnungen umgehen zu dürfen, sie sollen sich hüten. Einmal wird unsere Geduld zu Ende sein und dann wird den Juden das freche Lügenmaul gestopft werden.
The Nazi Party often spoke of how they were the cause of Germany's problems. These feelings were reflected in the people because Jewish store owners had prospered during the first economic downfall. They told the people not to buy from Jewish stores and put up signs telling people to defend themselves from the Jewish people and to buy from only German shops. In time, the hatred towards the Jews festered, and they were eventually being deported or sent to concentration camps, along with the homosexuals and the mentally and physically disabled. The other people who the Nazis blamed for the country's misfortunes were the government and the well-known November criminals. The reparations from the war were constantly being debated to handle the changing economy, and it seemed as if the government could never make a good decision. They were often blamed for everything and anything in Hitler's speeches. One of the most crucial pieces in the rise of Nazi power was the propaganda. This included the radio and newspaper coverage, the designated photographers and film crews, the Hitler Youth groups, the posters, the speeches, the burning of the non-German books. Propaganda was one of the most important tools that the Nazi Party used in getting their message out to the people, and getting the people to vote for them. They even appointed Joseph Goebbels as the Minister of Propaganda and Popular Enlightenment in 1933. Hitler himself played a large part in the Nazi rise to power. His charisma and passionate speeches made him famous, and his words put hope into the people of Germany when they were afraid. His speeches always addressed the problems the people wanted to hear, and he built on their preconceptions to service his own needs. It was many of his decisions that shaped the Nazi Party and led it on its journey through history. During the first economic depression, the economy was collapsing and Germany was unable to pay the reparations. It was because of this that the French decided to invade. They marched. On the 9th of November of the same year, 1923, Hitler launched a revolution of sorts, the Beer Hall Putsch. He was eventually arrested and sentenced to 5 years in jail, though in reality he was released on the 19th of December 1924 after only 9 months. Though Hitler was now banned from making public speeches for 2 years, and he had temporarily lost leadership of the NSDAP, it did not hinder his political career in any way. In fact, the Beer Hall Putsch only increased his fame in Germany, and the publishing of his book, Mein Kampf, boosted it even further. On the 26th of February, 1925, Hitler came up with a new plan for the Nazi Party, and made his first speech since his arrest announcing this plan, in the same beer hall of his failed revolution. Thousands upon thousands of spectators showed up to hear him speak, and the people took up areas surrounding the hall as there was not enough room inside. Here is a part of Hitler's speech after being appointed Chancellor.
Nun erwacht. Die Macht haben wir nun in Deutschland gewonnen. Nun gilt es, das deutsche Volk zu gewinnen. Ich weiß es, meine Kameraden, es ist euch wohl oft schwer gefallen, wenn ihr meintet, es müsse nun ein Wandel kommen, und er kann nicht, und immer wieder muss erneut Appell gerichtet werden. Es muss weitergekämpft werden, es geht nicht, ihr dürft nicht handeln, ihr müsst gehorchen, ihr müsst euch fügen, ihr müsst euch diesem unerhörten Zwang beugen.
After the failed beer hall putsch, Hitler decided that the best way to gain power was through legal terms. The Nazi Party had reached its peak and was then looking at a downfall, and so Hitler set his sights on the position of Chancellor. He knew that he would have to take a slightly different path to achieve this goal. The key to the eventual achievement of power lay not within the ballot box, but in backstairs intrigue. In Hitler's meetings with the political elite, he hinted that he did not want total control, and would instead not mind working with other conservative ministers. This boosted the morale, and the elite thought that they would be able to control Hitler. The only person standing in his way was Hugenberg, who viewed Hitler's movement as radical and violent, but after a secret meeting to persuade his family to support his rise to chancellorship, that hurdle was soon overcome. During a meeting with the president, von Papen assured him that Hitler's actions could be easily reined in and controlled, and so Hitler became chancellor on the 30th of January, 1933. That evening, thousands of people marched by Hitler as he stood at the window of his new office. Hitler's legal path to power, 10 years after his failed putsch, had finally unexpectedly triumphed, not from a rising of the national masses, but through the intrigues of a handful of ambitious and short-sighted politicians. It was after Hitler's rise to chancellor that things seemed to disintegrate. The Nazi Party staged a burning of the Reichstag, which was used for him to declare Article 48 of the Constitution necessary, and rule by emergency decree. On the evening of March 23rd, Hitler prevented the attendance of communists and social democrats at the Reichstag. This allowed him to pass the enabling law. Henceforth, Hitler could pass any law he wanted, without regard for parliamentary approval. After that, the rest of the political parties were either banned or voluntarily disbanded, and the law against formation of new parties was passed on the 14th of July. Exactly 1 year after Hitler's appointment to chancellor, he terminated the federal system in the Constitution. Then he combined the posts of president and chancellor, naming himself Führer. He then made the armed forces swear oaths of loyalty to him, becoming the sole leader. On the 30th of June, 1934, Hitler had any opponents or threats to his power murdered. This became known as the Night of the Long Knives. He then passed another law, essentially making it legal to arrest, detain, imprison, torture, and murder whoever became a threat to him. From now on, everyone obeyed the will of the Führer. Hitler had become the all-powerful, demigod-like figure who ruled over the adoring masses. The Nazi Party had successfully risen with a band of military assets at its disposal, and in only a few years it would throw the world into another war. There are many components that had to come together to make such a thing possible. The ending of World War I, the Treaty of Versailles, and multiple economic downfalls created a backdrop of shame, misery, and a yearning for change. The ideology and propaganda of the Nazi Party, along with the charisma and moving speeches of Adolf Hitler, drew people to them. And once the public could do no more, Hitler used his political skills to get him into the perfect position to destroy democracy and build a Third Reich. This could not have happened in any other way, in any other time. It was a combination of unique and unfortunate circumstances that paved the road for the Nazi rise to power.